All right. Once again, we are back. As you usually know, every Thursday we have a podcast episode. And here we are once again on Youth Ministry and Mentorship 101. Today, you know I'm always excited, but I have someone I'm very excited to speak with, Sister Elizabeth Auguste. The reason why I'm excited to speak with her today is because this is another young person who I had the privilege of seeing grow up. She was growing up at Efes,
Yep.
and in many years ago, we won't say how many years ago,
Yep.
I used to go to other Haitian churches and teach drilling and marching and Pathfinder ministry. And boy, oh boy, was I a terrible Pathfinder leader back in the day. I was horrible. You know why? Because I was all about my ego. And it's one of the biggest regrets I have in my ministry, that I focused on me and not on the young people. So,
Well, can I tell you though, the
yes.
discipline that you showed, that you taught us, we knew you were a little stern, and there were like 5 of us in the unit. So, we were low in numbers, but I remember feeling very proud of the progress that we made in that short time. So I'm
Uh,
glad you came through, and we still remember it with fond memories.
oh,
Sergeant Says was great.
oh my goodness. You see, they say that to make me feel better because they know I was so rough, and but I'm so glad to see them become leaders today. So, Sister Elizabeth, let's get into it. Can
Yeah.
you give us a little bit of history? We already know you grew up in a Haitian church. Tell
Yep.
us what you're doing now and
Sure.
why you're in ministry.
Okay, presently my ministry, for the most part, looks like music. I do a lot of music ministry. I've been traveling doing music ministry now for maybe 4 or 5 years. I got involved in music very, very early. My mother was the children's choir director at IFES, and so I was in that really early, and we learned how to sing from the little cassette tapes, and we just sang together. We graduated to an official choir director with Sister Carlene Holland, who was spectacular. And then from then on, I took voice lessons and started doing ministry at Hyde Park when I moved over there. And from then on, it's been amazing. I've been fortunate to sing with so many amazing other ministers and travel to other states. It's exciting.
Awesome, sister. So, going into music,
Mm-hmm.
how do you find music being important in worship service and how to minister to young people today?
Sure. So something I've realized that's really important about my relationship with God is honesty. And God asks me to be honest by just tugging on my heartstrings and saying, hey, what do you want to talk about today? Hey, what's bothering you? What's disturbing you? And I find that a lot of times the songs that we're singing about are talking about those problems, those yearnings, those tough times. I'm thinking about when upon life's billows you're tempest tossed, there's a storm there, or a more contemporary song, feeling like you're the one that got left and God coming to search for you. I think it's important that we share those messages, that we sing those messages. I think word travels quickly through song.
Mm, wow.
Yeah.
So, you said you travel. How often are you traveling doing this?
I wish I was doing it more. I hope it happens more. Right now, it's usually about once or twice a month.
Mm.
If the conference needs me for something, or Pulse, or Bridge. And sometimes, if someone's just like, hey, can you come to my church and sing? I love doing that too. And hopefully the ministry just grows.
Awesome. So you mentioned Bridge Ministry. I
Yeah.
had one of the leaders on in a previous episode. Go check that out.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned the Pulse Project. Could
Right.
you elaborate about what's happening with that ministry?
Sure. So our theme, our motto for the Pulse Project is a better you in every way. And what that looks like is really those foundational principles of health. And that looks like physical health, but we also want to start talking about spiritual health, and we want to talk about financial health and psychological health, and making sure that we are being holistically healthy, because we really believe that God wants us not just to be healthy in spirit, but to be healthy also in body and mind. And so we're reaching out to the town of Randolph right now, but I see the project growing, and we're trying to plant a church in Randolph. So if you hear about the Pulse Project, go to thepulseproject.net, and we'd love to see you at our future events.
Wow. So this is what I find very interesting about it, is that you mentioned that you are trying to plant a church in
Yeah.
Randolph. And is this, may I ask, is the leaders of the Pulse Project a lot of young adults that are
There's a
basically?
group of us. There's a mix of us. We have some older mentors, which I know we're going to talk about later, that mentorship aspect of church building. And then there's a group of young people who we've been involved in Boston. I think some of us are searching for a new kind of avenue to explore ministry. And it's exciting, and we hope that we're meeting the need. That's always the struggle.
Wow. Because I know for a fact that we get excited when we hear about, church plants, because
Right.
that's gonna affect the community, evangelize to the community, serve the community, and that's wonderful, especially if it's a mixture of
Definitely.
young adults and mentors. That's awesome. That gets me excited. So yeah, definitely check out that ministry, the Pulse Project. I've been checking out the sermons. Of course, I
Yep.
saw Pastor David McKenzie was preaching, Pastor Edsel Cadet.
Yeah.
You guys got the heavy hitters.
It was nice to get back into the basics. Both Pastor Cadet and Pastor McKenzie were really good about getting back to those basic, fundamental doctrines and principles that we've come to maybe take for granted sometimes. I think there's a thing that happens maybe in any denomination, but I know for me as Adventist, you can get kind of, I have gotten complacent, and sometimes it's good to get a refresher course on, hey, what is it we really do believe? We're going out here to teach people and tell people, but are we really, firmly planted? Do we really know what and why we believe what we believe?
Wow, awesome. Yeah, so that is awesome. I'm glad to see that that's happening. Especially that's another town in
Yeah,
Massachusetts that you never really hear about a church happening there. So Randolph, that's
right.
that's really good. That's good. So let's move on to this question I have for you.
Sure.
You grew up in the Haitian church.
Yeah,
You are currently at Hyde Park.
right.
Something I've been asking a lot of these Haitian leaders is,
Mhm.
how is it in the Haitian church that leads to that frustration, that you
Yeah,
either have a frustration within that church or you move on and become a leader
yeah.
in another church?
That's a really interesting question, because I think, remember how I was talking about meeting the need?
Yes.
I think it's twofold. I
Mm,
think sometimes the need changes of the individual, and then sometimes the church can't meet the need. And sometimes those are both happening at the same time.
mm,
Sometimes a church is offering all wonderful things, and the person is like, I love this church, it offers wonderful things. It's just not meeting my personal need. And so
yes.
I have to go elsewhere. Sometimes the church itself is not meeting a need for many, many people. And that's
Mm,
when you see sort of a mass sort of exodus of
yeah.
people. Sometimes there's the infrastructure is not there. Maybe um, the people who are in the upper rooms, if you will, don't look like the population. And then, people are like, am I really being represented here? So
Yeah.
I always think about it twofold. Sometimes maybe I just want a new ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm looking for something that I see happening elsewhere. But then it also, why are those ministries not being created at that same place? If I need
Mm-hmm.
something, how come I don't feel like I can create it where I am? And I think that's the question I think
Yeah.
maybe some churches should be asking.
Yeah, that's very interesting because I think that's the same thing I'm getting consistently said to me when I ask that question. Because one of the interesting things I said in a previous podcast is somebody mentioned something that I've heard happened a lot, where a church says we're losing members
Yeah,
to this other church,
wow,
and
mercy.
and I said, first of all, we're not in competition, we're in
Right,
cooperation, we're both
right.
we're even the same denomination. Why are we
Yeah,
upset at somebody going to another church? Should be happy for them, especially if they're saying that this church is meeting a need that your
yeah,
church is not meeting. The
yes.
other thing is, I think it's also a wake-up call, because
What can we learn here?
yes, especially if that exodus is a certain group, especially a group that is the future of the church. If it's an
Right,
exodus of the young people, I think
right,
that is very alarming, and
right.
it's something that the church needs to take very seriously and look at, because if you're not growing young, you are dying. So
Dying.
yeah, so that's something I always like to mention in these podcasts.
Mm,
So my next question
yeah.
is, even though you're at Hyde Park, what do you feel, what's your sense of how the Haitian churches are doing with mentoring and engaging with young people? How do you think they're doing?
Um, outside, I can say kind of outside looking in, although, I guess not technically outside. I'll give a few examples.
Okay.
Um, I went to a conference, maybe 1 or 2 years ago. I was invited to sing with the praise team. Um, and one of the things I kept hearing throughout the weekend was the people who are on the panel, the people who are on the staff, the people who are making announcements don't look like me. It's a young people's meeting, and everyone talking all the time is like 20 years older than me. It doesn't that doesn't compute. You're telling me it's a young people's meeting, and then I get here and you guys are doing a whole bunch of things I don't actually want to do. But
Mhm.
it's a struggle I hear from ministries across the board, where people are saying, you ask me what I want, and then I get there and it's not there. It's not happening.
Wow. Wow. I know you didn't mention the name of that conference to be
Yes.
polite. I
Yes.
know what conference you're talking about, and we'll talk
Yeah.
about that later. But yes, I totally understand that feeling. And I just hope that, episodes like this is a wake-up call
Yeah,
to,
well, sorry to interrupt. I guess I keep thinking though, like, of the practical. What
mm,
I'm not seeing an identification of gifts that are
uh,
present in the church, in the young people.
yes.
And lots of gifts are making themselves present. And we can't deny that the Holy Spirit is doing a work at this specific time, and calling young people to their gifting. I
Wow.
I just don't see people taking that seriously.
Mm,
Um, I see a rush of young people actually coming back to the church. I also see a huge growth potential for all of the young people who were left and, you know, are coming back. They want to come back with their friends. They want to tell their friends. They want it to be exciting. But if you're showing up with your friend, it gets vulnerable.
yes.
You want them to know they're coming into a safe place, that they're
Yes.
coming somewhere where someone. I give a quick example. I remember a friend invited me to a church, a first day church. And I know that there's always this comparison. There's always this thing that happens, and I don't like that culture. I think that we can learn from each other. However, um, I went there, and the first day I got there, I was singled out to be prayed for. Now, not everyone is comfortable with that,
Mm,
but I was so
blown
I
away.
just I was.
Yes.
I was. I can't even lie and say that I wasn't. I was happy that someone called me out and said, "You, daughter of the living God, you have more potential in you than you are accessing. You
Wow.
have this such and such issue and you're not dealing with it." And I was, a little whoa.
Yes.
but it was real. And I've
Yes.
seen those things happen in Adventist churches too. And I'm like, wow, okay, we're getting somewhere. But I think it needs to happen more. Prayer and covering and the oil, the anointing, just making sure that our young people are covered.
Yes, that intentionality of
Yes.
paying attention, you know? I think young people, they want that. They want to be seen. They want to be
Yeah.
paid attention to. Young people today, there's so much pressure to be perfect and so much pressure to do well in school, especially in the Haitian community. And yet the only people that are caring about them are either paid to do so, which is school people, teachers, administrators, counselors,
Yeah.
um, the pastor,
Yeah.
if they are,
Yeah.
and then the parents.
Yeah.
And it's like, how about some people that just do it because they believe in Jesus
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
love young people, you know, that if they see more of that, the impact it will have.
Yeah.
Uh, but sister, this is something you're passionate about, and I can
Right.
tell by your answers, but you also working with the bridge have a ministry that is helping engage with young people. Can you tell
Hmm.
us about it?
Sure. I love Bridge. I think Bridge came at a needful time. Um, I think that young people were looking for a place. There's a word we use often in Bridge culture called in reach.
Mm,
Um, it's one thing to go out and go minister to people, but oftentimes those people doing the ministering don't feel fed. They don't feel
yeah,
taken care of. And so we realized that there was a need for young Adventist people to get together and to talk and discuss some of those deeper matters that we maybe aren't accustomed to talking to. So then we can feel, we can feel more comfortable and more aligned because we know each other better to go
yeah.
out and spread the word.
Wow, awesome, awesome. Sister, you are very active. Music ministry, working with the bridge, and your own ministry, the Pulse Project. So um, let me ask you this question: what do
Yep.
you feel? How do you? And you mentioned mentorship already
Right.
in the Pulse Project happening. So how do you feel mentorship can affect the church for the better?
Yeah, wow. I mean, as we were talking, I was thinking about like, what are some more practical things I can tell people to that like it would be good to see. And I mean, I think a lot of churches could do well to have more associate pastors, to have more youth pastors, someone who can kind of be a liaison. You can have your executive pastor, you can have your head pastor, but sometimes it's nice to make sure that young people feel they have a representative that's not just from youth ministries or AYS department, um, or just an elder. That has worked well in the past. I've seen that work well in the past to have
Yes.
associate or youth pastors, um, and that person can be dedicated, to that task. Um, can you repeat the question for me one more time? I think I went a little
Yeah,
tangent.
it's how mentorship can benefit the church for the
Okay,
better.
so sort of related to that, I've been thinking a lot about the intergenerational mentorship,
Yes.
um, and how I really think that everyone should be assigned a mentor. When you get into your church, you're assigned a person, and that person's your person. Um, I think it makes sense usually to have them be same gender, although I know churches that assign two people. Some churches assign you a small group, depending on what the person's comfortable with. Um, I think mentorship is also important one-on-one.
Hmm.
I've had some really, really spectacular mentors in my past, some of which I didn't know were my mentors until later on.
Mm,
They were influencing my behaviors and giving me wisdom, and some of it doesn't sink in till years later.
wow.
And I'm grateful to have met them and that God brought me across their path. And sometimes it's only for a season. And I now, because I know how valuable the wisdom is, I'm now finally actively seeking out mentors of my own. And so I have in process like I've written literal letters, saying, can you mentor me? Because
Mm,
um, I know I can't do it alone. We're not an island, and God
yeah.
made this a relational world. And so
Yes.
I'm supposed to learn from those who've gone before me.
Wow. Awesome. And going on along with that, you said something interesting, like sometimes it hasn't even hit you until later that they were
Right.
your mentor, or something that they said didn't hit you as something really powerful that has changed your life until later. Could you
Yeah.
give us an example of something a mentor has told you that sticks with you to this day?
Yeah. I'll give two examples because I'm very much a nonverbal language learner, and
Mm,
nonverbal language is very important to me. And so, and I know for a lot of other people too, sometimes the words don't convey. And so I'll give two examples. I remember our late sister Carrie Peters, who what a spectacular soul. And I remember she saw me at the women's prayer conference um, earlier this year, and she just wrapped her arms around me and prayed for me. No
wow.
introduction, no, she didn't have to know where I was from, who I was. um, and and then when I saw her maybe a month or two later, she just remembered me, and I felt so blessed that this
Wow.
dynamic powerhouse woman of God remembered who I was. And so that was a great nonverbal. And then a verbal, um, my dear friend, Dr. Regina Shearer, she said to me, I wrote it down. She said, I remember there was this one day I was kind of stressed about my calling, and I was like, I don't know what's going on. I feel like my calling is changing. It's transforming. I don't have a handle on it. I don't get it. And I was just kind of angsty and emotional. And she pulled me aside and she just spoke life over me. She just gave me
Wow.
encouragement, and she just wanted to remind me that God saw so much more for me than I could see for myself. Um, but then she went specific. She said, "You might be singing now, but you might be speaking later. You might be writing later. Like it could look like your expression could look like
Mm,
singing now, but it doesn't have to stay that way as
wow.
you grow, as you change." And so she said, this is not all that you are. You are more than the boxes they put you in.
Mm,
And that
wow.
just, I still to this day, like when I feel like, oh, I'm becoming a writer, will my audience, will they get it?
Mm,
Will they fall? Will they stay with me? And God just reminds me, like, I didn't create you to just be a writer or just be a singer. You're my daughter, like, do it.
wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, you did mention a statement, but I think what you really touched you was that just the action and just the intentionality, saying that
Yeah.
word again, that of just them paying attention to you, seeing you, maybe saw that your eyebrows were furrowed or something,
Right.
like
Right.
that expression. They just said, you know what, I'm just gonna go over there and
Yeah.
just show some love, show some compassion, and then that completely changed your day.
Yeah.
So
Thank you for saying the word action. I mean, what I'm learning as I get older, if you will, is that a lot of what changes this life is doing something, like going out of your comfort zone and pushing through. Who knows, they maybe had to push through something to come talk to me, and I know that I was blessed. And so I pray that through that example, I can also learn, if there's a younger person who needs to hear, like, hey, girl, keep going. Or, I know your church maybe doesn't understand, but, maybe you can start a ministry there, then maybe that'll help.
wow, wow. So what I want to say to those who are listening, no matter what church you're in, no matter what denomination, that is so powerful to do. Just do that. Just, if you're afraid to do it, pray, but if you just have the strength just to do that, just to see a sister Elizabeth down the few pews down or something like that, and just show some love, you can change their day. It's just so amazing. And like, one of the reasons I do this podcast is to tell stories like that, because I feel a lot of churches, and some of them I grew up in,
Yeah.
we don't have those conversations with young people, and we come up to them when they have a milestone and we say congratulations, or we ask questions about when you're
Yeah.
hitting that next milestone, which is something a lot of young people have been telling me on this podcast.
Right.
Has that happened to you?
Chill.
Yeah. You do something amazing, like you're doing all these ministries, and then instead of saying, man, let me pray for you for all these ministries, the next words that come out of their mouth are, but when are you getting married?
Yes.
Has that happened to you?
Oh, yes. Yes. I
Okay.
mean, whenever there's like a sermon at church and pastors talking about like marriage, I get
Hmm.
the looks. I mean, sometimes it's okay, I think though there has to be some balance, I would like to be asked, how's your spiritual life? Can I give you, $20 to go buy groceries? I get that I get that that's important. I believe in marriage, but I think, that for one, not everyone's called to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then for two, there's sometimes a lot of time before that happens for any single person.
Yes.
And during that time, I think that time is supposed to be fruitful and beneficial to the world, and not just like a waiting period for marriage.
Yes.
Yeah.
So another thing I'll say, like I've always said, is let's put that pressure back on God, and let's not pressure our young people who are doing amazing things to reach another milestone after they've reached the milestone. Let's just stick with the congratulations.
Yeah, all in due time.
Yes, let's show them patience by being patient. So, Sister Elizabeth, this was a blessing to talk to you. It was very eye-opening. I can see that the Lord is using you in a mighty way. That's why I had to have you on here. As we close out, like I usually do on this podcast, I ask the guest to give some words of encouragement to any youth leader, minister that is listening.
I guess it's laying on my heart right now to give a disclaimer. I have to say that like this ministry work is never easy.
Yes.
I mean, it's easy because it brings joy and it makes the burden light. But I think it comes with attacks, and it comes with frustrations, and it comes with being misunderstood, and even sometimes by your own family or by your friends. A lot of the young people I see now growing up in this ministry are losing friends. They are having struggles with their family. They're sometimes the only one who's going to church now, and like, or maybe, they're the only young person left in their ministry, or they feel alone. And I just want you guys to know that, like, I can't promise you that stuff goes away. But seek out not just like older mentors, but also seek out peer-to-peer mentors. I'm finding in this season so many amazing friends and peer mentors who can just send me a text. Like the older mentors might not just like text me or call me, but it's been really great to have friends and spiritual mentors now they're becoming, who can just say, hey sis, and send me a verse on the Bible app, or join a plan with me, or can call me and pray with me, or just come pick me up and pray with me, and sometimes it's helpful to have the youthful energy around you. So I would say don't isolate. My friends are always telling me don't isolate. Ministry can feel lonely, but don't isolate. And in terms of encouragement, God will provide for you. God will make provision for you. If He has promised it to you, He will provide for you. And if you don't see the provision, the faith walk gets real. It gets really real, but it means God has a better way. And He just wants to show it to you. So I thank you so much for this opportunity. And
no problem. Yes. Awesome. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. We'll continue to pray for you and your ministry.